Should we go through the papers?
Oh, well, yeah, if you want. I'm quite nice. I'm having that...
Food coma.
Well, it's like that after-Christmas dinner where you just want to lie down on the sofa.
Right, don't worry, Dawn and I will sort this out. We've got the form editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and Chris Ackerman. I don't know if you're feeling in a food coma.
I'm feeling great.
Before Dawn feels too left out,
I'm feeling
cancelled. Oh, sweetheart, we just thought you didn't look like somebody that indulged in Christmas pudding. Ask supermodel that you are. I'm sorry.
Christmas pudding, though,
No, I know, but that's not the hint. It's nice to be
darling.
asked.
Next time we'll have you for the taste
If
test.
you're doing chocolate Santas,
You're there.
I'm there.
All right.
Right.
Let's talk, shall we, about the NHS. What Sir Keir Starmer had to say about it, Dawn. This in the Telegraph.
Right, yes, absolutely. Well, it's actually Keir Starmer trying to lay to rest many of the perceptions people have about Labour and the migration policy. He gave an interview up in Scotland, and he was saying that foreign staff are not the answer to the NHS crisis. As we know, the nurses have announced they are going to go on strike for the first time in a 150-year-old history of the Royal College of Nursing, I believe. And Keir Starmer's given an interview saying that what we've got to stop doing is relying so much on our foreign staff and actually start training people more. And one of Labour's pledges is to take on an extra 7,500 medical students on an annual basis from the UK to fill the vacancies. I mean, vacancies all over the country in the NHS at all levels of jobs as well. So I think he's actually trying to, because everyone seems to think that, you know, Labour have this open border policy, and Keir Starmer is saying, no, we don't have an open border policy.
Well, he's trying to appeal to the centre ground, isn't he? He's on election footing.
He is on election footing. That's exactly what he's trying to do, but he is saying, no, we don't have an open border policy. That's not what we're about. We need to invest more in UK talent in all areas.
But what's interesting with this, though, is he's accused that while doing all this, he's accused the government of having sticking plaster policies for nursing. But yet his own scheme isn't going to solve the problem for several years.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, look, no one can solve this problem overnight. I think we all admit that is the case. And as you say, Stephen, it's quite clearly electioneering. But, I mean, we seem to have this blur now between the two parties where some of the policies that the Conservatives are coming out with sound distinctly like Labour, and now Keir Starmer talking here of sounding more Conservative. So I think, you know, this general election, whenever we stagger around to it, it's going to be who are we meant to vote for?
Yeah.
But a lot of confusion.
To play for. Chris, you want to talk about bone banks, and we're talking about data poverty this morning, and exactly what that means. But I suppose it's increasingly important, isn't it, for people to have access to data?
Yeah, I think this is actually a good news story. Virgin O2 have got a pilot scheme, and they want to give access to data for anybody 18 plus who's low income and has no reliable access. Now, before the avalanche happens, they get 20 gigabytes of free data a month for 6 months. And I could very well imagine this being important saviour to some people. We know when in lockdown there were some families who didn't have a computer between them and couldn't have access. So I do think this is a good story. Apparently there are 2 million households who would fall under this metric, and they're struggling to afford reliable access. So well done. And there's also another thing that
I tell you what, this is interesting because about commercialism though in all of this, because we were talking to the boss of Virgin Media O2 about this earlier on. This is a PR stunt in effect to try and increase traffic and increase business. But this is where PR stunts and commercialism actually do benefit people.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, you know, it's a fair play to them for doing it.
Right.
In that sense. You just hope other ones follow on.
Yeah, so I didn't pick up on that. But like you said, if there is a real material benefit on the ground, then good luck with your PR.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
That's my
you should
thought.
sing about it if you're doing that. Why not?
Yeah.
Dawn, we're all getting fatter. And now, according to the Daily Star, we're all having to increase heights on the gymnastic bars, and now they're testing
Gymnastics
dummies.
bars.
Yeah, that was a
Use
technical
those a
term.
lot.
I was watching the World
And I
Championships
haven't
on
at all
Saturday.
picked this story because some of you have been eating chocolates, Christmas pudding all morning, and I haven't. Anyways, this is in the Daily Star, and it's the crash test dummies that we use to seat belts and airbags in cars. The European New Car Assessment Programme are upping the weight limit for the dummies, which are currently at 15 stone, to 19.5 stone, because we are all getting fatter. 28% of adults in England are obese at the moment, and that's not being improved in any way, shape, or form. So now they are going to use 19.5 stone dummies. But the thing that I know it's depressing. But the thing with this story, Isabel, in particular, is they used male dummies. Okay, they're all men. Now, how many women drive?
How would you know
What?
that they're male dummies?
Because they're the right size, shall we say, Stephen?
Oh, they haven't got any. I mean, I don't know. I think they're just human-shaped, aren't
Because they say, Stephen, they say that they are made for an average adult male. There you go. They might put a little bit on. I don't know. I've never looked. Have you looked?
they? No, they don't put a bit on. No, you do.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Anyway, but women are suffering because safety aspects in cars, Isabel, blanking you, are designed for men. So,
Right.
fat
Well,
men at that.
I have to say, a lot of girls complain about seatbelts and boobs being a problem.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
see that.
yeah.
A lot of women pull out
Yeah.
their seatbelt because it's uncomfortable to have it.
Mind you, a lot of men have bigger boobs than we do now, Isabel.
Also, when you're pregnant, but when you're pregnant as well, seatbelts can be really uncomfortable. So anyway.
But men can get pregnant now as well.
But
so
we're all getting fatter is the headline from that, and I love their headline, spare tyre.
Yeah, I know, it's
very
great.
good, very good.
Is it not? Is it just about? Because I was looking at a picture, and I don't know if it's true or just a model. But isn't it about the shape? They made them fat, like physically fatter.
Slightly, yeah.
Because
yeah.
isn't it that more about how you bend and all the rest of it is going to be?
And plus, it's the airbags, the actual impact that an airbag needs to be able to take. So it's not just the size; it is actually the weight of the dummy as well. Who knew we could talk about crash test dummies for that length of time, including their little bits?
And get so worked up about the gender of a crash test dummy. Come on, this is where
Gender's really important these days, Stephen. I'll have you know.
Let the dummies be what they want to be.
Then they can self-identify.
Like philosophy. Do what they want. Military homes in the Guardian, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, this is shocking, actually. I mean, some of the housing provided for the military is actually pretty wrong.
Yeah. I mean, my first married quarter, when I reflect on it, was absolutely bang out of order, thin plain, pane windows, no draft exclusions. Basically, a third of military homes are still in bad shape despite £650 million repair contracts. And it's juxtaposed with all the money the various suppliers are actually taking in dividends and benefits with the state of the homes. There's circa 48,000 service family accommodation, and 1/3 of them have got leaky roofs, broken doors, and are rotting. There's a quote from a serving sailor's wife who says she's lived with leaks and rots for 2.5 years. There's a lack of coordination between the company taking reports and the one doing the repairs. And then when you go into the article, you see this series of relationships between the person who's got the contract and then the subcontractors delivering, and they are not delivering.
You know what I find really upsetting about this particular story is the fact that we are all making such a fuss, rightly so, about Manston and the processing centre being in poor state, not fit for purpose. And yet this story is buried away in one paper, and we don't seem to, treat military families, and how many veterans do we have sleeping rough as well, is another link to this story.
Yeah.
We don't seem to treat them, and no one seems to care or make a fuss about it. It's a very important story.
So what happens in our country is like, for example, when we had the COVID scenario, we glorified our NHS, and when we had the Falklands, we glorified our military. So until a military conflict comes along, a lot of the challenges that go on in the military are unrepresented. But so they said an Englishman's home is a castle. Forget Lincoln a bit, but we all need our home, our safety, security, and your place to belong. And our military personnel have got 1/3 of them have got inadequate safety, security, and a place to belong.
Yeah, shocking.
Very
Absolutely
fair
shocking.
point.
Yeah.
And Dawn, should we talk about dogs? Battersea Dog
Yay!
Day, of course, really famous. But there is a flawed law that they are trying to highlight. and they want changed. And what does it mean?
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
basically,
Four-legged friends.
It is, absolutely. So, I mean, I promised to find you a nice animal story, Isabel. I failed miserably. This is about actually putting them to sleep, unfortunately. Basically, it's the Dangerous Dog Act, which identifies breeds simply by looking at them. And Battersea, amongst other animal charities, want the law changed because it's implying that, you know, that just identifying a dog by sight alone doesn't necessarily make it a dangerous dog. And Battersea's saying we have to put these dogs to sleep by law because they are...
There's nothing aggressive about them.
But there's nothing aggressive. They're deemed to be dangerous dogs just because they look like a dangerous dog. And they're citing a case here where even dogs from the same litter, some aren't deemed to be dangerous dogs because they don't look like the breed, and others do look like the breed. I mean, pit bulls in common, so they're the ones that put down. It doesn't make any sense.
So you can see,
no, it doesn't. But they're saying well, there needs to be treat the dogs according to their nature rather than the breed. And let's be honest here, it's not the dogs most of the time, it's the people that own them.
Yeah, I had a beautiful, I mean, he passed away now, but I had a beautiful Doberman, not Doberman, I had a Doberman as well, as she was Roxy, but Zen was my Rottweiler.
Yeah.
Now, Zen is just, he was just a beautiful, quiet, reserved dog. And now you can put him down because he looks like they call him a dangerous dog, but he was far from dangerous.
Yeah.
Roxy, well, she was a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, I agree with you. You know, you can't just because of the breed say let's put that one down.
You can't. But the issue of dog safety, I think this year more than any I can remember, has to be looked at, doesn't it? There have been so many fatal dog attacks, including of children this year. I think it's on average at least one a month.
But you have to ask the question of the owners
for sure,
rather than the dogs.
But it's a topic that I don't think is talked about enough.
You're right. And the thing is, Isabel, since the Dangerous Dog Act was actually introduced in this country, and pit bulls are the most common ones, there have been an increase in attacks. Right. So it doesn't seem to be helping the situation.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think it's down to the owners a lot of the time and how they're handled.
So put the owner down then.
Steady on.
Controversial.
Chris, can I just... We were hoping to go to the National Memorial Arboretum, but we can't get the line up at the minute. So can I talk to you about Remembrance? Because Remembrance Week, there's a lot, and the Royal British Legion are putting a lot of things on this week. It's hugely important, isn't it? It's important that we have this display at the Arboretum, which is opening today. It's important that we've got the Festival of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall with the King on Saturday, Cenotaph on Sunday. And as a veteran, what does it mean to you to see this being marked and remembered?
Yeah, great question, Steve. So I joined the Army in 1975, left in 1990. And when I come to this week, I think of the young men that I served with in the late 70s. Billy Langdon, Alfie Birch, Johnny Standen, and these were young, we were all young, vibrant guys, give and take. And in 1982, the Falklands happened. Now, none of the guys that you mentioned, as far as I'm aware, got disabled for the Falklands, but so many people did. So for me, when I think of the 11th of the 11th, I think of those young soldiers, how bright, how young, how vibrant, and yet how committed we were to the cause. I remember getting called up to go to the Falklands, 82, on parade square, standard operation PG7, which means you're locked in camp, download your weapons, and get your dog tag, which has got all your details on it. And I had to phone up my missus to tell her I wasn't coming home. On Monday, they called us back onto the barracks, and we, the 1st Battalion, Prince of Regiment of Yorkshire, that's who I was attached to, we were not selected to go, the Scottish Guards went, because we were too young. But we could have gone, and I would have gone. I called my missus, I didn't want to go, but my sense of duty meant I would have gone. So I could have been blown to smithereens, I would never have run, I would never come into my country. So that's what I think of. I think of all those young, vibrant men and women who commit, well, it's the King now, to serve the King and country, and will do so, and will lay down their life, pay the ultimate sacrifice, so that we have peace and security.
I mean, did you know what? I was at the Christmas mess do last year with my other half, and Lance Corporal Dixon said to me, and it start off, you know, they start off very formal, everyone's in mess dress and all the rest of it, and then it all goes a bit wild. And everyone was going wild, having a great time, very drunk. And Lance Corporal Dixon said to me, If you look around this room, if there was a major conflict, 30% of this lot would be dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
At least 30%.
Yeah.
And it was just that cold moment for me where you think, and there they are, all having fun,
Absolutely.
all young.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, Stephen.
Yeah.
That's exactly. So you know what they're like. That sort of.
Do you think there's an extra poignancy this year, though, Dawn, with everything that's happening in Ukraine? We've got war in Europe as we face 11/11. There are men and indeed women fighting for freedom as we speak. And do you think there is an extra sort of element to all of this?
I think there is. I think I agree with everything Chris and Stephen have just said. I mean, there should be a poignancy every year around this, and I think it's so easy these days to over-politicise it and almost say that if you are wearing a poppy or you're attending a remembrance service, that you are somehow supporting war. It's not about supporting war. It is about supporting every generation going back who have been willing to give their lives so that we can live free and in a democracy. And I think that's so often forgotten, especially maybe by younger generations that have lived war-free up until Ukraine.
Absolutely.
So I just think it's important to remember everybody going back over the decades that have been willing to give their all, and that's such a moving story. Looking around a room of people that 30% would never come home.
Lest we forget, as they say. Dawn Neeson and Chris Akabusi, you've been a delight. Thank
As
you
always.
both. Thank you.
Look, don't go anywhere. All the top stories, and we're hearing from Labour and Conservative politicians in a couple of minutes.